Hey, how you doing? Tom Maz, the way Brother Edwards on behalf of Ermanni and Edwards with Maz. We got JB as well as Fletch to the right and left doing a heck of a show on a beautiful Thursday. You know what? Let's bring in Scott Bischoff. We've talked about him. Let's go ahead and bring him in. Scott, it has been a while. How are you doing, my guy?
Hey, Scotty.
I'm great. How are you guys? Good to see you both.
We're doing good. I'm glad Maz is working today. You know what I'm saying? So he got a chance to be here for you. He hasn't been working on me lately, Scotty. Man, he's been running from me.
3 days off.
3 days is a lot in this business, man. There's always something going on. Speaking of something going on, Scotty, look, everybody's talking about the third pick overall right now. 6 teams have allegedly reached out to the Arizona Cardinals, the Detroit Lions being one of them. Why are the Detroit Lions and other teams reaching out to the Arizona Cardinals to get that pick?
Quarterback.
Detroit Lions as well?
Yeah, I mean, we got ourselves into a fair bit of trouble last year talking about quarterbacks. So
we did. Malik.
Yeah.
You Ryan, and Maz did.
That road?
Hey, I'm not afraid. I ain't scared, as Jim Schwartz would say.
Well, so it's interesting because if you think about like where the Lions are in their situation and like how the winning window just popped open like right now for them, which is kind of crazy to think about, but it is now. Are you entering the season with Jared Goff as your quarterback and Nate Sudfeld as your backup, and that's it? Like, is that really what you're doing? Is the plan Teddy Bridgewater? I think it's almost a little bit. It's reckless to just assume that Goff is going to play and be healthy for the entire season, and not plan for the possibility of him getting hurt and missing time. So that leads to a much bigger discussion about you take a quarterback early, you take him late. Is it a developmental type player? To me, I mean, there's a couple players who fit and would likely be available maybe at pick 3 that you should be considering, and I think it's likely all they're doing is just dotting I's and crossing T's on potential players who may be available.
At 100%. I think that's another reason why C.J. Stroud came in. You never know what you're going to do, and I appreciate that. But what if it's for Will Anderson Jr.? You talk about Will Anderson Jr. We talked about him being the number 1 player last year. We talked about going into this draft at one point, the number 1 player. You get Will Anderson Jr., and you get, at 18 from Tennessee, Hendon Hooker.
I mean, if people get a little bit hung up on Hendon Hooker's age. He's 24. He's going to be 20. Obviously, he's going to be 25.
Right.
ACL injury. So I think you're looking at a guy who likely requires a year, right? That offense is a little bizarre. There's a lot of Braylon, you could talk about this significantly better than I can. The idea of running receivers deep down the field and then giving them options. Not necessarily defined routes, but just options. If the safety's leverage is here, you get open kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so there's not a lot of development that happens in the Tennessee offense for quarterbacks. So I mean, and there's no offense that's run like that in the NFL. So I think it's gonna take a little time for him, but just the idea of addressing the position to me is intriguing. And I know that people are gonna people are gonna hate it. The Goff hate. It's not Goff hate. It's just understanding that at some point in time you need to move past what you currently have. And the Lions are just the reality is they're going to win enough games in the next little while that they're not going to be in position to draft quarterback.
That's a good
early.
thing.
And it's a great thing, but do you take the last opportunity to do that? And maybe you might need to think about it. I understand that there's a million different ways that they've constructed this roster, that they can go about, how they want to handle their business as far as who they draft and how they construct this. It's really interesting because there's just they haven't really given you an indication as to what they're going to do because of where the roster stands, and suddenly how they have depth in a lot of places and the roster looks really good. Again, I think their winning window opens up this year, and they need to be particularly paying attention.
Well, the good news for Hendon Hooker in that Josh Heupel offense is that the Detroit Lions have a damn good offensive line, so he might get some of that time that he had down in Tennessee, Maz.
Yeah.
Scotty, speaking of, let me just hear your first 6 picks right now. Right now, we're sitting at April 13th. What are your first 6 picks? Who's picking each team? Let me hear what you got right now before I go Lions.
Wow.
He wants to know those top 5, baby.
So this is going to be tough because do you want me to tell you what I think they'll do? What's going to happen? Or
I want to hear what you think right now. 1 through 6 goes. You're on the clock. Panthers. Who are they taking?
So if it's me, I'm not giving up all that capital to take a player who may end up as a middle of the road starting quarterback. I don't want to put it in baseball terms. I'm not looking for a singles hitter.
Yeah.
Or a doubles hitter, whatever. After giving up all those picks, I want, chicks dig the long ball. I want to take Anthony Richardson at 1. I do.
Whoa!
The upside is so great with him. I understand that Bryce Young is a very polished football player with ridiculous cerebral ability post snap. I get it. It's just he is the size of a small high school point guard.
Right.
And are you giving up all the capital you gave up to trade up for a player with as small as he is? Now that's really the only knock on him. Everything else is, he's super polished.
Yeah.
I like C.J. Stroud's ability to throw the football. I think he's as naturally accurate a passer as there is in this draft. But I don't love his ability to do things when things break down. And behind that Ohio State offensive line, it didn't break down much. So there's a little bit of what is he going to look like if it's Carolina's offensive line and there's some pressure that he sees. That could be ugly.
Scott, I may have to take you back to 1 real quick. Anthony Richardson at 1. You're swinging for the fence with Anthony Richardson at 1, giving what you know about his in-game play last year, what you saw out of him last year. I get all the measurables, they're time, but over Bryce Young, I understand the small thing. Everybody's always like,
no, he can't see over the line.
He's small. He can't. Well, Drew Brees can see over the line pretty good.
He could.
Yeah. Everybody's always
doesn't play small though.
He does not play small. Like people's like he's small. He's 204 now, but will that last the whole season?
You don't got to defend Bryce. We know he's good.
I got to defend Bryce because people need to hear it. Like you talk about Russell Wilson got drafted in the 2nd round. Russell Wilson never won a Heisman or a national championship.
He was a winner though.
Drew Brees never won a Heisman or a national championship. Bryce Young's won a Heisman. Been finalist again. He's been to 2 national championships. He's won 1 and should have won another. I just had to throw that out there. My apologies.
Okay, so now
listen. I mean, you could draft Bryce Young, and it would make tons of sense. The things that stand out to me with him is like when the Texas game last year, the games where they're down last year, where they need drives in the 4th quarter, he is like cool as it
lights
gets.
out.
No issues. Confident.
Remember the Auburn game 2 years ago?
Yes. Yeah, they needed a field goal and a touchdown. Yeah. I mean, he's, so, I think you flip back and forth, but to me, it's upside.
Okay.
It's also a situation where, Richardson may not hit that upside. So that's the calculus, is trying to determine, like with Richardson, I think he's much more ahead as a player than a lot of people give him credit for. His pocket awareness, his progressions. Florida's offense didn't do him any favors, whether it's drops, whether it's forcing him to, asking him to throw the ball down the field a lot. And then the idea of, when things do break down, which they're gonna, he's big and athletic enough to make things happen, make plays happen. But I wouldn't, I know that you guys are looking for like a rock solid answer. To me, it's either Richardson or Young. I would lean Richardson just for the upside. But if you're if we want to go Bryce Young,
I get it.
Based on just what he is as a player, I there's no issues with that.
All right, Frank Reich, we know what likes. He even said it. I like Anthony Richardson. I might lose the battle to David Tepper and the general manager, but I like Anthony Richardson. We don't know if he's lying. We don't know if it's a smokescreen. So let's go to the Texans. I hear rumors they might not even take a quarterback. What are you doing as the Texans?
So I think a lot of that stems from C.J. Stroud's agent is David Mulugeta. He is the same agent that Deshaun Watson had. And I don't think the Texans are gonna want to jump back in that pool again. there's some bad vibes there, just between the agent and the team. And really, so if Bryce Young goes at 1, I really could see that's what's driving this conversation, is that the Texans don't really want to be involved with Stroud just based on some of that stuff. And like Braylon said, there's too much there. There's too much risk there with Richardson. And after that, there's nobody. I know there's Will Levis, but it's too early for him.
No, you had it right. There's nobody.
Yeah.
You had it right.
Yeah. I mean, I would have Hendon Hooker before Levis.
Yeah, thank you.
But I think there will be teams that do have Levis higher than we think, and it's going to blow our minds. And it's going to be one of those NFL draft things that just happens. Teams tend to just lose it. You know what? When they get locked on to certain things. I mean, he's a big guy. He's super tough. He's got a great arm. He can make plays outside structure. He's a good runner and all that stuff. But I just think when you look at him, he's behind the other 4. That's just me.
Hey, before we got to take a break, Scotty. Before we got to take a break, get me picks 3, 4, and 5. And then we're coming back for the Lions.
We got 2 minutes because I actually wanted to ask about Seattle. Like I'm very inquisitive about Seattle. You can
pick 3 first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Pick 3. Arizona. Are they staying? If they do, is it Will Anderson?
Well, you guys mentioned it coming in. I think that they're going to do everything they can to trade out. That's a bad roster. They need a lot. It's just a matter of where they want to go. There's some discussions that Tennessee really would come up to 3 if C.J. Stroud were available. So in a scenario where Stroud's available, I think they would be easy. I mean, it would be easy for them to trade out, and they'd get a lot. I think that jumping up ahead of Indianapolis to take Stroud at 3 is something that would happen. It's just a matter of who does it. I think there's a lot of teams that may consider doing it. I mean, you've heard about the 6 plus teams that have reached out. It's just we don't know who's going 1 or 2, and it feels like there's a little bit of a pissing match between those 2 teams right now. I would think that C.J. Stroud is the player at 3, if he's not the player at 1, kind of thing.
Okay.
The trade-out happens.
How about at 4? Yeah. They're getting the quarterback.
And I would say that if Richardson's on the board at 4, he's the pick. Shane Steichen developing Jalen Hurts. There's a lot of that same stuff. Characters off the charts with Richardson. I think they would run to the podium and make that pick.
This is finally where Jalen Carter comes into the picture in the 2023 NFL Draft. There's been some talk about Jalen Carter potentially going to Seattle. If Will Anderson Jr. is there, that's another pick, and also Anthony Richardson if he's there. What is Pete Carroll and John Snyder, GM, what are they looking at 5, the Seattle Seahawks?
Potentially a player you didn't mention, Tyree Wilson, likely from Texas Tech.
I just don't see him going to 5. Like, and that could be me doing an oversight, not doing my homework. I just think Jalen Carter, Will Anderson Jr., Anthony Richardson, they're at 5. They're at 5. I don't see Tyree Wilson in that equation, but I could be wrong.
I mean, it's possible. So if people want to see like a more detailed take on this, it's at Detroit Lions podcast where I've been doing a bunch of stuff. It's essentially the Will Anderson matchup against Darnell Wright, who you can see the right tackle, and how Wright just kind of swallows him up, right? So, so we can talk about Will Anderson if you guys want, and it may piss off some people, but like I know.
No, talk about what you want to talk about. We got you on. Give us what you got.
Last year we talked about him being the consensus best pass rusher in the draft last year. Not in the draft, but in college football.
Yeah.
And last year it looked like he was. He looked a lot more bendy and a lot more first step quickness and all that stuff. And it wouldn't surprise me to hear that he got heavier this year. And he didn't look the same. He doesn't look the same as far as being able to turn the corner on an offensive tackle. So his game developed into a bull rush only game. And for a smaller guy, I know he weighed 253 at the combine, but he didn't play anywhere near that big. And for a guy who's going to bull rush you only, the matchup against Darnell Wright is one that should give you some pause about what it is that he brings. Where realistically he wants to run through the full man or win inside. And he's comfortable being physical and all those things, but he's just not going to win around the corner like you really want. So Anderson is a guy I could see. I guess I'm gonna talk out of both sides of my mouth a little bit. I could see a team really liking him early, like Arizona, if they're stuck and they can't move out. Maybe that's the pick. But I could also see him falling a little bit, falling to 6, kind of thing, where people are confused as to why that's happening, and there's just the reality that he doesn't win, and maybe won't win at the NFL level the way you need a pass rusher to, which is where Wilson comes into the equation, where he's just learning as a player. But when you look at physical traits and size and power and all that stuff, and the ability to bend and those things, he's got that all. He's got all those tools in the toolbox, where I could see a team like Seattle thinking, this guy's super big and physical. We like that, and we like the idea of what he's going to become, not necessarily who he is now. And then, kind of standing out in that whole conversation is what happens with Jalen Carter, because when you watch Jalen Carter play, I don't think there's a better player in college football. I just don't. I thought it last year when we looked at it last year, when you look at Trayvon Walker going 1, and you look at Jordan Davis going 14 to Philadelphia.
Scott, not to cut you off, was it just me? Did Jalen Carter not have the better game on that defensive line out of both those guys last year in national championship game?
He was the best player on that defensive line the entire season. He was incredible this year. And then you hear this stuff. I know that the car accident stuff, and he got the ticket, but now you're hearing stuff that just feels like it's so. Georgia had to ask him to get on the treadmill. They had to beg him to come to practice and all that stuff. And it's like, I don't think a guy does. I don't think he explodes blockers in the SEC like that regularly if he's not working. If he's not, not working at being a good football player. He just does things physically that nobody else can do. And I think he's a better. Derek Brown went pretty early a few years ago out of Auburn to Carolina. He's a better player than Derek Brown was. He's not Ndamukong Suh, but I think he's right in between. He's like kind of between those two guys. The nice thing about the Lions situation is that with Brad Holmes and Campbell, you feel comfortable enough with them, with the things that they've done, that they're going to get to the right answer on a player like Carter. And if they're comfortable taking him, it's because they've done enough on his football character to where, they're comfortable taking him. And we all should be thrilled, because it's a huge need on that defensive line, and it would turn his presence alone would turn that defensive line and make it nasty.
Yeah.
And if they're out on him, it's because he doesn't have the football character that they're looking for, and we all should be comfortable that they've made the right decision.
Yep.
But that's going to be a tough one. Jalen Carter is an incredible football player. It is undeniable how good he is on the football field, and it's just a matter of how teams feel about him off the field. And I'm aware of the combine performance and all that stuff. I don't think we should throw away a couple years of film that looks ridiculous the way it does.
I 100% agree with you, and we can pretty much agree that the Lions are a victim of circumstance at 6. So I don't even want to necessarily talk about what the Lions are going to do at 6. I'm more so want to talk about 18. At 18, I've heard so many things. You hear about Bijan Robinson slides down to 18. You've heard about Weatherspoon at 18. You've heard about Joey Porter Jr. at 18. You've heard Hendon Hooker at 18. What are the Detroit Lions? What is the best fit position-wise at 18? That's a question for you, Scott Bischoff. What position at 18?
It's because of what they've done with the roster. There's so many ways they can go. I would think that a player like Joey Porter Jr. at 18 makes a ton of sense. Witherspoon would too. Whether he gets there is another story. But he's small, and I think he's smaller than we even know. And his play style is reckless. He's like a missile.
That's not good.
Yeah, I think we're talking about a guy who's around 5'11" and plays at sub 180 pounds, hitting the way he hits. He is going to get injured.
Sounds like Antoine Winfield Jr.
Yeah, when you throw your body around like that, you're going to have shoulder injuries. You're going to have stuff. To me, 6 is a little too early for him. But I know I have friends who are in the business, and they're all about him at 6. And it's like, okay, he does fit that, but. So corner is clearly a need. I know that they have a lot of guys on 1-year deals, but corner is a position in need. But one of the under talked about things is a player like Darnell Wright at 18 and being able to play him at right guard. I'm sorry, him at right guard, and now you have him working at right tackle in the future, with Penei Sewell kicking over to left tackle in the future when it's time for Taylor Decker to move on, and that to me makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
From a roster development standpoint, whether or not Darnell Wright's there is another story. I don't think he should be. He's a really good player.
He dominated that Alabama game last year.
Yeah, I mean, look at at Detroit Lions podcast, I broke down that game, and he swallows Will Anderson whole. Like, there's nothing there for Anderson, and there's just not. And he's a big, huge guy, 6'5" and 340 pounds, long arms, great anchor, all that stuff. The ability to play him as a right tackle in the future with Sewell as a left tackle, and to be able to do that in advance, knowing the offensive line is the key to everything, to me makes sense. But you don't have to go down that road. You could go down the Bijan road if you wanted to. You could take defensive tackle who slips to 18, or who might not slip, but maybe a player that you need a 3-tech. You need some heaviness in the interior of the defensive line. I don't have great answers as far as like how many positions they might go to, but I think there's a lot of ways they can go about it. Brian Branch, the safety from Alabama, would make sense. If you want to get really, really interesting, Elijah Cansey, the defensive tackle from Pittsburgh, would be really, really interesting. I think
now we're getting somewhere.
I think some of his issues are a little oversold as far as not being able to hold up against the run, but when you look at just pure penetration from the interior, he's a nightmare. So, there's a lot of ways they can go about it. A lot of ways they can go about it and have it make sense, too. It's good. Good stuff for the Lions.
Do you think the Lions are going to use all their picks, Scott? Or do you think you're going to see some movement, especially after pick number 6? I think they hold at 6 and grab Jalen Carter. I think he will slip to them. But like Braylon's you're sitting at 18, and you got a bunch of other picks. You just picked up a 5th rounder for Jeff Okudah.
Oh, don't worry.
There's a bunch of picks out there. They have 10 picks. I don't see them using all 10 picks. Really?
No, I mean, we saw it last year. Out of the blue, they come up to 12 and pick Jamison Williams.
Right.
I would say it's much more likely that they move some stuff and come up and do something splashy like that.
Yeah.
I would think it's very likely they do stuff like that. Holmes has done that. The Rams did that for years. They moved picks. They moved multiple first rounders for Jalen Ramsey. They moved.
Yeah, F the draft. Remember that? F the draft.
Yeah, you move picks for Brandon Cooks. They're just tools. They're assets to go get better, right? So it wouldn't surprise me a bit if they gave up 18 and something to come up for a player that they coveted.
Sounds good to me. Hey, this is the first year I am so comfortable, no matter what they do, because that's how much trust I have in Brad Holmes.
You say that
and
now.
That regime.
I guarantee you draft night, you're gonna be sweating bullets.
But I think I'd be. I'm so.
You be sweating bullets. I did draft night with you last year.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say. I just cannot wait. I can't wait.
Scott, before we let you go,
it's exciting times. It really is exciting to be a Lions fan. It
really is. First time, man. Yeah. First time.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. Here's something for you. There was a player that requested a trade yesterday. He's a guy that I've wanted since the season was over with. We got a 5th for Jeff Okudah. What if we just give our 5th round pick to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and then we pick up a certain contract that's $11.3 million this year in Devin White? Then we don't have to worry about drafting a linebacker.
Is there a lot of value in Devin White's game, though?
You talking about the guy that's probably the sole reason why they won a Super Bowl 3 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, if he affects the pass rush or the passing game, yeah. I mean, that's fine. They have the money to do that kind of stuff. That's the kind of thing like I think Maz is talking about.
So you don't like Devin White, though?
No, I like Devin White. He's fine, right? It's just they have – when you look at the Rams and what they've done historically, and now with Brad Holmes here, they just haven't prioritized the linebacker position. I know they're paying Enzo. He drafted Rodriguez in the 6th round. He moved up for Barnes in round 4, I think it was.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where they are. If they think that they're close enough that they're going to contend with a team like Philly, which Lions fans, you should be really thinking that way, then that'd be a smart. That's fine. I don't know what you'd have to give up for him. Tampa needs the cap space. They need the money savings. You know, that's fine. It's just I don't know that they would do that. But I have no reason to doubt it. It's just how does he fit behind that defensive line? And really, if he's a really good football player, it's just do they prioritize that? I don't know.
Well, you heard that from our guy Scott Bischoff, staff writer for Football Guys. Give him a follow at Bischoff_Scott. Scott, we appreciate you having you on all the time. Thank you, brother.
Thanks, Scotty.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.